special. So let us begin to look at what it might be. And I invite you to think about the most important relationships in your life. Children, parents, partners, soulmates. Because the way you are in those relationships will help you understand what selfless service means, because often it is in these close relationships where we are willing to serve their highest good, sometimes before ours. Whether or not we will receive thank you for it, because our love goes beyond that. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of immature relationship and when I'm doing things to get attention or to win their affection or to look good or doing things to make them. That's obsession. It's a different kind of relationship. I'm talking about the deep, mature love, the kind of love that loves because that's what love does. Parents sometimes tell me about that phase in their children's lives where, children start to separate from their parents. What's it, around 14? I forget the age. Where the parents everything about the parents just become uncool. And even your love for them might be received with disdain. But you keep on loving them. Because your love is like the rays of the sun coming down undefended, unrestricted, uncompromising. It's all just a gift. It's unending. And you cannot control how they will receive it. And you cannot control how they will turn out. That you keep on loving. And it's the same with selfless service, which is also known as seva. Seva, or selfless service, is an attitude of life in which you are nurturing the life around you, not to control it, but because you understand without doing that part, you're not your full self. You're just not complete. It's like selfless giving, which is different from making a charitable contribution. Both are good. But one has a goal, such as the furthering of a good cause. The other one has no such goal. It has an understanding instead. Selfless giving is the understanding that when I don't give, I'm just not using all of my being. And that when I do give, I'm standing in my full nature and I'm touching something in me that's true. Serving and giving, it's that simple, really. Just serve. Just give like the sun shines. And when we do that, we are engaging in the most powerful work that we are capable of. The work that helps us to contribute to making the world a better place in which our children can grow free and strong. Now, when I say serving and giving, I'm not thinking of something extravagant and monumental. I'm talking about nothing more than helping those in your immediate environment start really close, where there is already a foundation. Friends, family, siblings, neighbors. And then that way to build a nation. Here are some qualities that help selfless service, or some actions, I guess. Anonymity helps. Not seeking acknowledgement helps. Doing it quietly helps. Doing the tasks that others are not willing to do or cannot do helps. Doing what has been left undone helps. Doing what brings relief helps. And as I said, there's nothing wrong with doing a good deed or making a charitable gift. Charitable gift is where you show support of some good work by sponsoring it, and then you get a reference to your company. It's an advertisement at the same time. It's just wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. We've been the recipient of many charitable gifts and some good deeds that, thank God. Thank God for them. One of our members has shown me that charitable giving and selfless service and selfless giving can all coexist at the same time. It's not either or. He is a businessman who sponsored several months of our radio program, paid for them, and in response to that, he's received an endorsement for his company on the radio. It's a win-win situation. It's just good business. But what most people don't know is that this same person gives and serves tirelessly in ways that you will never know, because he doesn't seek recognition. Ever since I've been here, he has given extraordinary acts of service, done things that nobody else would do. You know, just the other day, a person came to me and approached me, and this person had heard that our music director, Chris Ritchie, had bought himself a brand new guitar to play for us. And this person wanted to buy the guitar for Chris without being known. So I facilitated that. I got the check and gave it to Chris. And you know, the effect of such an anonymous gift is disarming if you've ever received one. I can just imagine for Chris that he must be wondering how, if he knew who the person was, he might be tempted to pay that person additional attention. And how he now cannot feel beholden to someone he doesn't know. And he never will. It's a powerful act of service that just touched him, and there's nothing he can do about it. There is a feeling in selflessness that we respond to naturally. And we have radar inside of us when we know it's not selfless. We can smell it. I was reading an article by T. Sher Singh, S-I-N-G-H, and she was describing a very moving event that she witnessed in New Mexico, where thousands of devotees had come to pay tribute to their guru who had passed. They came from all over the world in the thousands and thousands and thousands. So the local community in New Mexico had to rent a platoon of portable toilets. Now, if you've ever been to a street fair and needed to use the facilities, you know how quickly that can become interesting. Am I right? This is what she writes. It would have been terribly easy to have also bought the services of a handful of workers who could have maintained the facilities and kept them clean at all times. What touched me deeply was the vision of our hosts, who saw it as an unprecedented opportunity to do seva. At any time of the day or night, if you walked into the facilities, you saw a couple of the Sikhs from the community cleaning the toilets and water basins, or down on their hands and knees, cleaning the floor. It was arguably the cleanest spot within the endless acreage roped in for the events of the week. And you know, there was not a sign anywhere proclaiming seva provided by this or that community. Nothing. Not a word. Not a peep. That's seva. That helped me think about selfless service and how it exists for its own sake. Because without it, I'm not accessing all of me. Is meant to be a stepping stone to position or bigger things. It isn't seva if you need to tell others now or later that you did it. It isn't seva if a lack of appreciation by others or their criticism drives you away. It isn't seva if you believe that it is your right to do it. It isn't seva if you have to fight against others to do it in a certain way that suits you. It isn't savor if you snatch it up away from somebody else who's doing it. It isn't savor if you begin to believe that you're the best one to do it. It isn't savor if it distresses you that other people take credit for what you have done. And it isn't savor if years later the words arise in your consciousness, after all I did for them. Krishna says, work incessantly or act incessantly. Your duty is to work, but not to expect the fruits thereof. Here's another way of thinking about selfless service. Here's what it might be. Maybe selfless service is how God does her work in the world through you. Remember the opening song? Use me, O God, I stand for you. And here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. Command my hands. What must they do? Command my life. It's here for you. I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you, the opening lines of a letter from one of our community members that I have never let go of since the day I received it. To say thank you to all of those who have literally and figuratively held the door of this center open for me. I came here about 20 years ago when it was the little church on Orchard Street, and I was at a particularly challenging time in my life. When things got better for me, I stopped coming. But I always came back during the difficult times in my life, and the door was always open, and someone was there to greet me with a smile. People made fabulous music for me over the years, and there was always a lovely environment with flowers, and there was always a minister with words of inspiration, and someone to serve me a cup of coffee after the service, or to pray with me when I put in a prayer request. I'm sorry to admit that I did not put a lot of thought into how this all came together. And apart from helping out in the youth church when my son was there, and making a token contribution to the offering each week, I did not feel moved to do anything to guarantee its continuity. I took the church very much for granted, assuming that it would always be there, and indeed it was, like a lifeline during life's most challenging times. Things changed for me about 3 years ago when I realized that I really wanted to be part of a community. And I knew that in order to do that I needed to become involved in the activities of the center. So I took the classes, and I was particularly struck by the lesson on giving. And for the first time, my giving became something other than a token. The major milestone came for me in May of 1998 when I became a member of the center, and I realized that now it was my turn to hold the door open, literally and figuratively. Now I serve you coffee after service, and I do my part to pay the bills each month. For me, the move to ownership of our own building has been a wonderful opportunity for me to give both of my time and my treasure. And I am richly rewarded and blessed with a feeling of belonging that I have never known before. Recently, I heard someone say that it had been suggested to him that he give not because others need to receive, but because he needed to give. I have been giving this some thought and came to the conclusion that it is Spirit's nature to give, and I am having fun thinking of creative ways to express my giving nature. I make it my joy to spread seeds of love and kindness every day, and I make it my business to pay my monthly tithe at the center as surely as I pay my utilities and telephone bills. And I am in loving appreciation for all of those, living and deceased, who have contributed to my spiritual growth and the realization of myself. You can't hope for a better PR piece than that. You know what it reminds me of also? It reminds me that there are times when you and I all we can do is show up and we can't serve. All we can do is show up and receive because that's all we've got. And that's good too. That's very good. Because who will we serve if we don't take turns? Sometimes we just have to show up and feel the support. And then eventually, over time, we refuel. We fill up the tanks. And then that's where service steps in as a way to give back what we have received, not because it is required, but because it is natural. It's a way of circulating the good, keeping it going. It's the way of expressing who you truly are. It's a way of holding up the future by serving up the present. And one of the reasons why service is recommended as a part of a well-rounded spiritual practice is because it has unintended side effects. You get into it all high-minded to serve, do Spirit's work in the world, use me, what must my hands do? And then the side effect is that you get to know other people. And then as a result, it creates this experience we call community. And then other people get to know you in your beautiful, open-hearted way. And then when we know each other, it's easier for us to love each other. It becomes easier then for us to know when somebody is hurting and where support is needed, when a child is born or when somebody is passing, because we know each other. I have been thinking about the qualities of those people who engage in selfless service, and I think there are elements that I aspire to that they have. People who serve frequently know how to listen. People who serve are often forgiving. People who serve have a sense of resiliency that doesn't come from anything around them. Often they measure themselves and know their value from intangible things. And people who serve often give more space than what they take. Here are some pointers. Number 1, be yourself. It's all you've got. Of course, however, you've got to take the time to know what that self is. Because if you come into service all unexplored, unexamined, you don't know who you are, you stand the chance of laying a trip on other people because you've got an agenda and a mission. Number 2, remain unattached to the outcome because you can't control it. But also because the people we serve may be hurting so badly that they can't acknowledge our service. It's just not available for them. And that can be hard if you are a person who is on a mission to improve other people's lives. Or if you think your good work should be acknowledged and make a difference in the world, it might not. Service is on the other side of all of that. Service is standing in the flow and being an agent of divine circulation. The consciousness of service asks, how can I serve today, sweet Spirit? Where you lead, I will follow. I invite you to breathe in with me and exhale into a moment of quiet as we enter into an atmosphere of prayer. There is a joy in waking up again to this awareness of our unity, to the privilege of living and breathing, to the privilege of being able to inquire within, and to the amazing awareness that we are a part of a life that is seamlessly integrated. I'm particularly grateful for that song because ever since we started rehearsing it, the words have been running through my head because they so support the new focus for this month, celebrating spiritual community by serving together. And the words of the song honor one of America's greatest role models when it comes to selfless service, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So I've been listening to those words in my head. Let us turn our thoughts today to Martin Luther King and recognize that there are ties between us, all men and women living on the earth, ties of hope and love, of sister and brotherhood, that we are bound together in our desire to see the world become a place in which our children can grow free and strong. We are bound together by the task that stands before us and the road that lies ahead. We are bound and we are bound. It's a perfect introduction to a timely topic for our world, the task that stands before us and our individual roles in carrying that out. I'm a little self-conscious today because of this topic that I'm presenting, because it's so easy to offend people with this topic, and it is a topic that is often rejected in a self-centered society. But I have to talk about it because it's on the calendar. And so I'm going to approach it gently by talking about the difference between doing a good deed and selfless service. It's the same or similar difference between making a charitable donation versus giving selflessly. It's not that one is right or one is wrong. Both are very valuable and make a wonderful contribution to our world. I think it's just that as we practice and become spiritually mature, we start to notice there's a substantial difference in the two valuable practices. And the difference is really a shift in focus, a shift in focus from the self in me to the self in thee. Those who are familiar with selfless service, well, they start to notice that shift in focus has a relationship to the depression, the tension, and the war and the materialism in our world, because those are frequently a product of the me-first culture. And then they begin to see how selfless service is a kind of remedy for these stressful conditions that seem to plague our world. They notice how isolation and anxiety and meaninglessness come from living a life that is cut off from the very life that sustains us. As one teacher explained it through answering this question, why is selfless service so valuable? She said, because most of our self is in others. I think this is how it works. I'm a point of individual consciousness in universal mind. And at the same time, I'm part of something much larger. So I notice that there appear to be other points of consciousness. And when I focus exclusively on this one particular point of consciousness, well, I'm effectively cutting out all of the diversity and beauty and the splendor of the rest of me as it shows up in you. And that can potentially lead to a feeling of meaninglessness. You see, if my whole spiritual practice and all of my prayer and all of my work focuses on my personal happiness exclusively, well then, because part of the ingredients are missing, the recipe never produces what I expected it to. I always end up getting something that's too dry or too tasteless or not nourishing enough. When I don't take in the needs of those around me, I become separated from that part of me that exists in them. And the result is fragmentation and numbness. Perhaps that's why we hear of folk who work hard to become successful. They focus on it exclusively, and then they do become successful in all areas, successful professionally, successful financially, successful in relationships. But through introspection, they discover that they remain discontented as if some important piece is missing. And when that is missing, it gives rise to fear of the future, fear of loneliness, fear of dying. And maybe it's because through our focus on ourselves, we start to believe in our isolation as if it's true, as if it's real. And then to compensate, we hear of people filling up their lives with anything to substitute for the lack of connection. Activities, religions, substances, relationships. Searching endlessly for anything that will join the dots and help produce in us a sense of the connectedness that we know is our complete reality. And then the mind rises up with ideas, suggestions for what will fix it. Try this, try that, try this, try that. Leading us to attach ourselves to certain feelings that will substitute. Drawing us into things that will either dull us down so that we don't feel it or stimulate us up so that we think that's it. And so sometimes we can find ourselves ending up following the next great teacher, following the next great philosophy, chasing after the next too good to be true, do nothing and get rich plan. Pursuing the next sensational experience that will fill us up so completely, when all the while what we were seeking remains available right under our nose. In the beginning, I mentioned there's a difference between doing a good deed and selfless service. And I want to say again, I'm not of the opinion that one is right and one is wrong. Both are valuable. It's just that today we are interested in learning about selfless service because most of us already know how to do a good deed. We can do that. Selfless service is special. So let us